Okay, everyone, welcome to part 4 of the Chanukah class. We're still within a month of Chanukah, at least a month of the middle of Chanukah. Now, we had 2 classes, I think, on Chanukah, something like that. And then one was after Chanukah. And then I was going to do the 4th class, which hopefully today will conclude the discourse. I was going to do it last week, but then we got caught up with the Moshiach updates, which we're still going to continue with God's help. Hopefully Moshiach will come before. Now we're going to learn the last parak in Derech Mitzvosecha, which is a book of the holy Tzemach Tzedek. And this is the 3rd chapter in mitzvos Ner Chanukah. When I say the 3rd chapter, I mean the Maayon is divided into two times 3 chapters. First, there is 3 chapters on the essence of Chanukah, and then there are 3 chapters explaining the details of the laws of Chanukah. So last time we learned the significance of the argument of Shammai and Hillel, which way we work by increasing the lights or decreasing the lights, comparing it to the oxen that are offered on Sukkot. And we were talking about the 8 tzaddikim versus the 7 shepherds, the Or Makif, the encompassing lights. Very interesting class number 3. This is class number 4, and this is a phenomenal subject. This class is going to explain the spiritual significance of why we light the menorah on the left side of the door. Usually all mitzvos we associate with right, besides tefillin, which is wrapped on the left hand, but all the other mitzvot we always give honor to the right side. And suddenly over here, the mitzvah is that it should be on the left. So let's read a fascinating explanation. And now this is in the book Derech Mitzvosecha from the Tzemach Tzedek on page 148 in the mitzvah of Ner Chanukah. Now in Navar we will explain top the reason. To the place where the menorah is placed. That is on the left side. Smoila Knisa, from the left side of the one that's entering. Kedei, and the reason for that is that we want that the mezuzah should be on the right side of the door. The right side, when you're entering into a house, the mezuzah is on the right side of the person entering, going into the house. Mezuzah is on the right side, and the sages say, simply they're saying you should be surrounded with mitzvahs. When the sages decided where to put the menorah, and they wanted us to do it to publicize the miracle, so therefore we do it at the doorway so that it's being seen on the street. It's initially the mitzvah was to do it the closest part of the house to the outside. If you have a courtyard in front of the house, you do it if there's a entranceway going from the courtyard to the street, you put it by if it's safe and if it's not going to blow out by the wind, you actually put it outside. In Israel, they have a lot of people light with these plastic encasements that keep the menorah safe from winds that blow, and you put it outside of your house at the outmost doorway. Okay. So they want you to put it at the doorway. Now, at the doorway, where are you going to put it? So they looked and they saw there's another mitzvah there by the door, because you'll put the mezuzah, which is the scroll and parchment that mentions the unity of God that we put on our doorway. I mean, it's also a protection. So they said, hey, if we have the menorah put on the right side of the door, then we'll have both these mitzvot on the right, which is fantastic, but then the person is not surrounded with mitzvahs. Let's rather do it in a way where you're, at least for the time of Chanukah, you have the opportunity to have mitzvahs in every direction, surrounding you, encircling you, like we gave the class before about encircling, lighting, finding the circular lights. So you want to have the mitzvahs encircling you from all directions. So on the right side, you have the mezuzah, and on the left side, you have the menorah. That's the simple reason the Talmud gives. But he's going to give a deeper explanation. What's the relationship with 2 things, first of all? Why the menorah on the left? That means that there's some connection to the menorah being on the left. Why is the mezuzah on the right? And why did the sages phrase it so the menorah, the mezuzah will be on the right and the menorah will be on the left, which seems to imply that they support each other. By the mezuzah being on the right, it enhances the Chanukah menorah that's on the left. So because when they tell you to put it on the left, they say Kedei sheyeh mezuzah biyamin, that the mezuzah on the right, v'ner Chanukah mismol, and the menorah on the left, which means the menorah on the left is being boosted. It's getting a boost by the mezuzah on the right. So that's what he's coming to explain. Again, now, also the mitzvah is, now what will also be explained over here, in addition to it being on the left, is also why the mitzvah is to place them to the doorway that is the closest to the public domain, leparsume nisa, for the publicizing of the miracle. Like stated in Shulchan Aruch. Perik Beis the Shabbos. And the Shulchan Aruch is the code of Jewish law, which this particular teaching or law is derived from the Talmud, the second chapter of Tractate Shabbos. Where there is a whole big few pages that is the subject of, a few pages which is the subject of Chanukah. The Inyan, and the idea is, this is coming to show us, Inyan Gadol v'amuk ma'od, a very great thing and something very deep. In the order of how the divine energies are drawn down. We learned earlier already, I'm just going to give you a brief introduction to all that we're learning, is that the concept over here is Chanukah menorah is an enormous illumination. Remember, we were learning that the whole system became contaminated, and there was a whole lack of clarity in the Jewish soul. The spirituality of the Jewish people became contacted germs. The Greeks inserted germs into the very spiritual lifeline, which is the Torah became fagrikt. The Torah became lost its Jewish holy purity. So in order to have a cleansing and a purification in our lifeblood, which is the Torah, we needed to draw the Torah from a higher place. Torah is wisdom. This is what we learned earlier. This was the content of the earlier classes. The Torah is divine wisdom, and that wisdom was contaminated. So just like similar to the idea when there is you have a well, water, and the water gets water a lot. He doesn't give that example here, but that example is brought to similar places. In other places of Chassidus, I'm just borrowing it. When you have water that is a water source, like a spring, and it gets muddy, dirty, germy, whatever. So one of the ways to heal the water is to dig deeper and get to a deeper part of the spring. And from there, you're opening up a whole new, fresh flow of water that flushes out the old water. And now you have like a whole new, because you're going deeper to the source, to the core of the subterranean waters where the spring is coming from. So the spring coming from a deeper place is now almost like a new spring. So the idea with the Torah that required on Chanukah was that we needed to refurbish or re-sparkle the Torah. And the idea of light of the menorah, of Chanukah menorah, is that this special jar of oil that they found, oil is chachma, wisdom. The fact that it was closed with the seal of the Kohen Gadol is indicating that this is a very, very high place. This supreme oil, it's the level of Torah, but the level of Torah that is utterly concealed and hidden, just like oil is hidden in the olive. And they pulled that oil out, meaning within God himself, they reached the wisdom of God that was not revealed, but the wisdom of God that God has still inside the infinite, inside the essence of God. In Kabbalistic terminology, he explained that they reached the Chachma Stima, the concealed wisdom, and pulled that, downloaded that. And when that was downloaded, it kind of brought a whole new fresh light. Now, I didn't say this in last class, but what the way the Rebbe interprets this in other sichas, is that they actually pulled forth Pnimiyas HaTorah on Chanukah. Which means all the Chassidus and all the Kabbalah and all that came to the Jewish people really starts on Chanukah. The shemen and the oil, that's Pnimiyas HaTorah. That's the inner light of the Torah. That's the Chassidus, which is not contaminatable because it's such a hidden, high, the godliness of the Torah. The Torah is felt very strongly that this is God's wisdom. And that happened on Chanukah. Now, based on that idea, comes out that Chanukah is a bringing forth of something hidden in God and bringing it out into a state of illumination, into a state of revelation, into a state of emanation. The rule is that every emanate, and now that happened back time in the time of the Greeks, and then every year Chanukah, by us lighting the menorah, we're illuminating that great light. We're bringing forth again that powerful oil and that powerful. We're purifying the Torah, so to speak, refreshing the Torah, doing a refresh from a higher, deeper place. But that's all a download. It's pulling something from a hidden state into a revealed state. Every download needs an upload. In order to produce a download of the divine, we need to stimulate it from above. That stimulation from above is all the mitzvot that we do. The mitzvot that we do all year is all serving as a elevation. We are elevating energies up, sparks of holiness or whatever that is. We're elevating the material existence. Every mitzvah elevates some part of the physical world. That elevation rises. And when it comes Chanukah, then we have the download that is a response to the upload of the mitzvahs. So really, you can't have a Chanukah menorah without all the other mitzvot. Because you can't trigger that great deep illumination and enlightenment. You're getting such a powerful divine enlightenment that you can sit and look at your menorah and gate that all that godliness pouring into your soul and pouring into the world. But it requires what we call serusa de latata, an arousal from below to rise upward, which is what all mitzvahs are. And this is what he's going to develop in a fascinating way over here. And different than we usually speak. That's what's very beautiful. The mezuzah being on the right side, the mezuzah is not really just the mezuzah. The mezuzah is representing all mitzvahs. For two reasons. The sages say that all the Torah is compared to mezuzah. Why? Because the Torah compares all the mitzvahs to tefillin. There is a verse that says explicitly that all mitzvahs are compared to tefillin, and then mezuzah is compared to tefillin individually. So therefore, by way of that kind of method of learning, we say that all mitzvahs are compared to mezuzah. Why? The idea of mitzvahs is to elevate our physical material world in general and all of our physical possessions to God. The mezuzah is a mitzvah that has to, which you sanctify your home itself, the entire house, especially the outside mezuzah, that's to the entrance of the house. And in a sense, it elevates the entire home. Once you elevate the entire home, everything in the home is already elevated. So then the rest of the mitzvahs are all detailed. You elevate the money of the house, the currency of the house through giving tzedakah. You elevate you elevate your food in your house by separating challah and giving it to the kohen in today's days. You by tithing this or tithing that. These are all the details of the particles, which it requires. Every part of a person's possessions has a different way of elevating. You can't just do the general elevation and forget the details. But yet, the mezuzah represents a lifting up of the entire space of the human being. In that sense, the mezuzah is representing all the mitzvot. And that's why the mezuzah stands together with the menorah, because the mezuzah powers the menorah. But the difference is as follows. The mezuzah is upward energy, meaning the whole idea of all the mitzvot is to elevate the material physical existence, to refine it, to make it more godly. That's elevating from the bottom up, lifting the world up. That belongs on the right side. And the menorah, which is an illumination coming down, is the energy that belongs to the left, which is shocking because usually Kabbalistically we would think the opposite, that the right side is chesed, is kindness, which is flowing energy, and the left side is where fire is. The left is fire, which is an inwardness. Here it works the opposite. The answer is because, and I'm already giving you some of the ideas that he's going to say in the end, is because when we are bringing something to God, when we are, what's it called again? When we're putting a basket, what a mezuzah is, and filling the basket up and then lifting it and saying, here, God, here's my basket, the only way that enters the divine is God stretches out his hand and embraces it, pulls it in. The hand that pulls you close, when the person is coming, he's not just bringing a basket close, he's actually bringing himself with that basket. And God has to give you a hug. When God gives you a hug, what God is doing is that he's pulling the person, he's grabbing the human being and grabbing the person and pulling you in. Yeah. He's pulling you in, grabbing you, embracing you, and bringing you close. That's why it belongs to the right side. Because the right side is the verse says, V'yamino, and his right hand, Chapkenu, embraces us. So therefore, the mitzvos belong on the right side. The Torah, which is God's projection, the Chanukah Menorah, which is Hashem's light shining downward, which is like the idea of the Torah, because Torah is an illumination from God to us, that is primarily coming to illuminate a dark place. And it's much darker on the left than it is darker on the right. That's why, since the point of the menorah is to bring light down into the world, the left side of existence is darker than the right side in general, because in the left is much more concealment and constriction. So it becomes a darker place. So we have to make greater effort to bring light down and to illuminate the left element of the world. And that's the reason why mezuzah goes to the left. This is in a nutshell what he's going to explain now in the next 2-hour class, probably. Here we go. This is coming to indicate something very, very great and deep in the order of drawing divine light into the world. And that is as follows. Mezuzah is one of the 613 commandments. In that, it's just one mitzvah. However, it represents all the mitzvahs. It also is a mitzvah that it personifies all the mitzvahs. Because we know that the sages say in Masechtas Kedushin, Tractate Kedushin, that all of the Torah is compared to tefillin. All right, tefillin are the phylactery. We once made I made a promise once that I was not going to say phylacteries, because I don't think anybody knows phylacteries more than tefillin. If you know what tefillin is, tefillin. Okay, I just violated that, but it was a long time ago that I took that upon myself. So, the entire Torah was compared to tefillin. And so to mezuzah. I think it's by way of, since mezuzah and tefillin are stated in the same verse, and we know that the Torah is compared to tefillin, so it's as if the entire Torah is compared to mezuzah. But I think so. Maybe not. Maybe there's a direct phrase that indicates that the mezuzah is equal to all the mitzvot. I'm not sure on that. And the commandment comes, since the mitzvah of tefillin. That's very interesting. Tefillin is also all the Torah compared to tefillin. All the mitzvahs of the Torah compared to tefillin, yet tefillin is on the left hand. Total opposite than the mezuzah. He's saying over here that the essence of the mitzvah versus Torah, mitzvah belongs on the right side and Torah on the left side. And the proof to that is, and that's why when we put the mezuzah on the right, it's not just mezuzah, it's mezuzah as it's representing all the mitzvot, because the whole Torah is compared to mezuzah. But I have a question. The whole Torah is compared to tefillin as well, and tefillin is on the left, not on the right. A question. We're not going to die from a question. But we're going to continue. We have to say that the tefillin represents something about mitzvahs unrelated to the fact that tefillin is on the left side. In other words, that aspect of tefillin is on the left side is a quality that tefillin has that is uniquely to tefillin and not representing all the mitzvot. But the mezuzah being on the right side, that is a quality of mezuzah that is related not just to mezuzah, but to all of mitzvot in general. They belong on the right. Because this is the quality of the mitzvah. The quality of the mitzvahs are the general objective and accomplishment of all mitzvahs is something to do that can only be accomplished on the right side. It belongs to the divine side of the right side of the divine. Like will be explained. The Ner Chanukah now, on the other hand, we have the night, the menorah, the Chanukah menorah. For this bar, we've already explained earlier. That it's what it represents is the quality of the Torah. What did we say? That the whole point of Chanukah was that the Torah has become contaminated. And the Torah needed a rejuvenation, a refreshing. So, and it explains why. Why is the menorah related to it's almost like on Chanukah. On Chanukah, there is it's similar to Purim. One of the great things about Purim, we say, is that God it's almost like a reacceptance of the Torah. Torah was given at Sinai on Shavuot, right? And then the whole acceptance of the Torah, the sages say, was shaky. It wasn't really to the full. Why? Because we were coerced. God held a mountain over our head. But by the time of Purim, the Jewish people accepted the Torah all over again. In that sense, Purim is considered the giving of the Torah 0.2. Now Chanukah is again the giving of the Torah. That I never saw it that way. Chanukah is like the third giving of the Torah, because the Torah as it was then got a little stale, got a little, as we said, contaminated, perverted by the Greeks beginning to study Torah and adding their Greekness into the Torah that contaminated the Torah for the Jewish people. So we needed to refresh the Torah from a much deeper place. So we brought down the new light, and that's the menorah. It's related to the Torah. That the divine wisdom prevailed, strengthened itself, and prevailed over the klipa wisdom. The Greeks wanted to make the Jewish people forget the Torah. And therefore, since the inyan of Chanukah menorah is Torah, it belongs on the left. That belongs on the left. Kikach inyana, because that's its inyan. That's where it belongs. That's its energy. It's an energy belonging on the left. Now, okay, now we know the placement. Mezuzah belongs on the right, menorah on the left. But from the way the sages said it, and this I already mentioned this question earlier, from the way the sages say, not only, because the sages could have said, menorah, it's Torah, it belongs on the left. Instead, they don't say that. They say you should have the mezuzah on the right. But who's talking about mezuzah now? We're talking just about where to place the menorah. And the sages say, no, put your menorah on the left so the mezuzah will be on the right and the menorah on the left. The reason is because putting the mezuzah on the right enables the menorah to be on the left, or boosts the menorah on the left, or enhances the menorah on the left. That means that the menorah on the left is gaining power from the mezuzah on the right. So it's not just two separate concepts. This one belongs here and this one belongs here, but they work in harmony. The Amar Razal, this that the sages say, the mezuzah needs to be on the right. And that is because through the mezuzah being on the right side, yesh siyu'ah, there is an assistance, l'ner Chanukah shemasmol, to the light of the menorah that's on the left. Now, this idea that the two of them work hand in hand and one supports the other is similar to what the verse says. Kiner mitzvah v'Torah or. It's a verse in Mishlei and Proverbs. It says kiner mitzvah. That mitzvah is a lamp. The Torah or, and Torah is a light. Now, a lamp. Now, what do we mean mitzvah is a lamp? And so sometimes we explain it that the mitzvah is a lamp, and a lamp means the oil, the lantern itself, the oil, the wick, and the fire. That's all a lamp. The Torah is a light. It could be the light of the sun, the daylight, or something like that. That's sometimes the explanation. But another time explanation is no, they're actually one set. The mitzvah is the container, the glass, the whole lantern, the oil, and the wick. The Torah is the actual fire, the flame that's burning on the top. Then we can clearly see, without the lamp, you have no flame. You can't just bring a flame and draw it down just to be floating in the air. A flame needs a lamp to a whole setting to hold that fire down. With that, we'll understand that you cannot have the illumination of Torah without mitzvos. That's why the sages say that if someone says, I'm very scholarly, I love Torah, I don't care for mitzvahs, the sages say even Torah he doesn't have. He's studying Torah, but his Torah is an empty, hollow Torah without any divine light in it. In order to have the true divine illumination of Torah, you need to also observe the mitzvot. The observance of the mitzvahs create the lamp and where the flame of Torah can shine. Well, Derech Mashakasim, this is what it says, Ner mitzvah v'Torah or. The mitzvah is compared to a lamp, the Torah or, and Torah is light. Al yedei ner the mitzvah, which means through the lamp of the mitzvah, ba or the Torah, comes the light of the Torah. The inyan and the idea is as follows. In this bar lamala we've explained earlier, in Ner Chanukah, in the idea of Ner Chanukah, shuhu taisefes ha'arach mechachmas tima. We explained earlier, in the earlier classes, that the idea of the lights of Chanukah is an added illumination coming from the concealed wisdom. We discussed that the revealed wisdom became contaminated, like a spring that got someone contaminated the water. So the only option is either to pump all the water out, bring new water, or the better option is to dig deeper and get a whole new refreshed water from the spring. So that's what happened. The Torah, as it was given at Sinai, was not sufficient anymore. We needed to dig deeper into God to pull forth the very same Torah, but from a more inner place. And that's the idea of bringing Chachmas Tima'ah, the hidden level of wisdom, into actualization. That's called getting the oil and drawing down that oil. Added light, from the hidden Chachma, from the level of Chachma while it's still in Keter. Torah is Chachma, it's God's wisdom. But there's two levels in divine wisdom. There is Chachma, wisdom, as it is one of the 10 Sefirot, one of the 10 attributes. And then there is wisdom as it is still in the infinite light, embedded in the infinite light before God emanates the Sefirot. So those are like the 10 Sefirot, why they are still lost in the infinite potential. That in there you can find Chachma Shebe Keser. The Chachma of Keser, it's called, the Chachma in the crown, it's called Chachmas Tima, the concealed wisdom. From there they needed to unplug wisdom. Wisdom had to be unplugged from such a deep place. Now the drawing forth of such a high level of Chachma, you need to have vessels who can receive the light. Remember we said earlier that Chachmas Tima, that wisdom naturally, it's very shy and very inward, it doesn't want to come out. It has to be chased out. Or you have to have a super powerful magnetic pull that pulls it out. Or else it remains inward. So So the fact that this light should shine outward needs stimulation. One of the stimulators that stimulate, remember we were learning earlier, is through stoking the pleasure of the essence, through a good fragrance. Remember we said that how did Moshe Rabbeinu chase that oil down? He put in spices and fragrance, which those fragrance trigger a pleasure, which pleasure opens up the person and helps the energy flow. We discussed. That was Moshe in the desert. When there was, in the time of the story of Chanukah, we couldn't reach that because we didn't have that power anymore to reach through the fragrances. The Shemen HaMishcha, we said, was another method. Chachmas Adam Ta'ir Panav, the radiance of a person's face. Remember, we learned this a few weeks ago. The radiance of a person's face, when they receive new insight, they become so radiant, which is pleasure, and that pleasure causes an openness and a flow of wisdom. But now we're learning a third thing that helps draw something down. It's very hard to give a class when there's no students. The students come, the teacher has what to give. The fountain flows when the students are there. See, that's why you came tonight. Students need to pull, because that's the flow of energy. There has to be a flow. The vessels pull the light. You create a vessel, the light will come. The famous story with the Shunamis and Elisha. The great prophet Elisha tells the woman, she says, I don't have a penny to pay. The creditors are coming. They're threatening to take my children as collateral. And they cry to Elisha, and Elisha says, do you have anything? She says, I have a little jar of oil. He says, go borrow from go get as many vessels as you can, barrels, and then you'll pour the oil. And don't diminish how many barrels you're going to get. She goes out and she brings a lot of it. And then she starts pouring, and this little jar becomes a fountain, a never-ending fountain. And it flows, and it flows, and it flows, and it fills the barrels. And then her children are helping her. They keep on bringing another barrel. And then she says, bring another barrel. She wants more oil. And they say, there's no more. We ran out of the cups. And suddenly the oil disappeared. So you see, the oil is coming when there is a vessel. So the rule is vessels draw down the light. That's why it's important. The more mitzvahs you do in your life, sometimes you feel that if you're going to help someone and do a mitzvah, it's disturbing you from learning Torah. And you don't want to, when someone seeks help, you're such a scholar, you're so busy learning that you don't want to turn and help a person in need. And you don't realize that the Torah will illuminate to you when you have a vessel. A mitzvah is a vessel. So you help someone, it seems unrelated. You give someone a ride, that someone who needs a ride to the hospital or whatever, you go visit someone, you just sit and listen to someone pour out their heart, and you sympathize with them, and you give them 20 minutes of your time. It might be the time that you would be learning Torah. It's going to make that in the rest of the time that you're going to be learning, you're going to have such a light and such illumination that you would never have without it. The holiness and the godly light that's going to pour in your Torah is going to be exponentially greater because you have a vessel. The mitzvahs are the vessel. That's what he's going to explain. You need to have vessels who receive the light through it. Now, he's going to first show us something really magnificent. He's going to show us how, in addition to the fact that mitzvahs are the vessels through which the light of the Torah flows, but there it's like a little bit disconnected, at least it looks like. You do a mitzvah, you charity in the morning, and then in the afternoon you study Torah and you have new insight because of the mitzvah you did. That's one thing. But he's going to show us that in Torah itself, there is the illumination of the Torah, the wisdom of the Torah, and there are the vessels. The vessels of the Torah are the words of the Torah, the letters of the vessels. And the vessels, sometimes you learn and you're reading something and you don't understand the word you're learning. And you almost feel like you're wasting your time by reading the letters. And don't stop reading those holy words. Because by reading those holy words, the words themselves will bring down the light. Doesn't mean you shouldn't try to concentrate and try to figure it out. But never feel it's a waste of time that you sat down to a passage, to a Mishnah, and you read it and you walked away, I don't understand the word. Or a discourse of Chassidus, or whatever it is you learned and you felt like it just, you said those holy letters. And we'll see an amazing thing. Those holy letters really are higher than the concepts that are in those letters. They're godlier. The letters, the containers, are really godlier than the liquid that's in the containers. And precisely because of that, they cause the light to come down. Because their source is higher than the light, than the illumination, they have the ability to force the light down from concealment to revelation. The letters themselves are higher than the light. And that's going to serve as an introduction to understand how mitzvos as well, just any, which is also vessels, containers. Mitzvos are containers, which also serve the same thing, help the Torah shine more brighter. So let's see. These are the letters of the Torah. They are the vessels to the wisdom of Torah. So too above, just like it isn't by us when we study Torah, we have words, and the words are containers to ideas. The same is also in the supernal source above, in the divine, that God's wisdom also comes with words. Val Yadam, these are the letters of the Torah. Val Yadam, and through them, Nimshacha Or de Chachma, this is through where the light, the light of wisdom flows. And that's the reason why I said earlier, he's referring to what he said earlier in chapter 1, I think, of the original discourse, or maybe chapter 2. He brings in the name of the Arizal that when the word the Piddish lahadlik, when you light the menorah, you say lahadlik, to ignite. Lahadlik, to ignite Ner Chanukah, or to light the Ner Chanukah. The word lahadlik, which is part of the blessing, is gematria, the numeric value of that word, which when the Arizal gives you a gematria, it's not just a cool little cute thing. It's because the Arizal knows the internal code of everything. And that internal code, the secret of what the energy of the blessing is, what the power of the blessing is through the numeric value and through what it equals. And then you can know the power of the blessing. We can make up gematria, it doesn't really mean anything, but when the Arizal says it, it's because he was able to look into any entity and see its soul. So what's the soul of the blessing of the word lahadlik? So the Arizal says that the numeric value is equals to the miloi of the name Ayin Beis, Samach Gimel, and Memhei, which are the three names of God, tetragrammaton, that have a miloi. A miloi are the letters you don't see in the letter, but they're there, like Aleph. You see the letter Aleph, you don't see the Lamed and the Pei. That's called miloi. So in God's name, Yud Kei Vav Kei, there are various different milois you can fill, and based on that, the gematria is going to be 72, 63, 45, or 52. These are four different ways, Kabbalistically, that the internal letters of the tetragrammaton. The difference is if you fill them, which letter you use to fill. Not all, there are variables of how you fill the Yud Kei Vav Kei, because a Hey could be filled with an Aleph, a Hey could be filled with a Yud, or a Hey could be filled with a Hey. Aleph, Yud, or Hey. And that's mostly, is also, how do you fill the Vav, with an Aleph, without an Aleph. That's how it comes to the gematria. But the Kabbalists revealed to us that there are four primary forms when you do the gematria. Now, if you take just the internal letters, not the external, the letter you see, just the internal letter of 72, and that is equal, the way to figure that out is 72 minus 26 is what? Because you take away the Yud Kei Vav Kei and you just leave the inside letters. How much is 72 minus 26? Who's good at math over here? What? 72 minus 26. 72 minus 20 is 52. 52 minus 6. Yeah, you're right, 46. So it's 46. Then you do 63 minus 26. Is what? What? 37. Good. So let's add 37. And then 45 minus 26, I know that that's 19. So add that up now together for me. 19 plus 37 plus 46. Nineteen plus 30, what? No one wants to use the phone, the calculator. What is it? How much? 102. So the Arizal says the word lahadlik is what? 202 or 102? 102. So hold on, let's see how lahadlik. Lahadlik seems to be more. Kuf is already 100, 110, 140, 144, 149, plus 30, 179. So it's 180. So how do you have, give me a second, I have to go back where he says it earlier. What? Give me a second. Oh, the Hadlik should be Gematria, Milui Ayin Beis, Samach Gimel, and Mem Hey. It should be Gematria, Milui Ayin Beis, Samach Gimel. Let's try, hold on. Let's try not eliminating the letters. Let's try 72 plus 63 plus 45. Do that for me, please. 72 plus 63 plus 45. 180. Oh, okay. So I was wrong. I thought it's only the Miloi, not with the, no, it's the full Miloi. It's 72, 45, 45 and 63. All these numbers together, today we have a lot of vessels, going to pour down enormous light. So when you pool all of that together, it's 180. Okay. So what does it have to do with what we're saying? Lahadlik, in order to light the menorah, which means to bring down that illumination, it's through these 72, 45, and 63. What is the significance of these numbers? These are the letters of God's name. They're the letters. Not just the letters, but the full pronunciation of the letters. The letters and all the hidden letters, which means literally the vessels, the containers. What does that mean? In order to create the light of the menorah, we need a lot of containers, which are the miloi of all of God's names. Not the energy of the name, the letters of the name, the containers of the name. So this supports this idea that the entire energy of the Torah flows and is drawn forth through the kalim, through the vessels, through the letters. Shahu, okay. Well, let's read it over here. The Piddish Lahadlik Shu Miloi da Ayin Beis. It's the Miloi of 72. Here he says only 72, but if you look earlier, he says it's 72, 45, and 63. It's through these letters. This is what pulls forth the illumination of the wisdom. Why are these letters so powerful? What gives the letters the power to draw down light? Letters seem to be, if you look at a human being, words are the most external element of a person. Words, it's from the way you communicate to the outside. How can you compare words to emotions? How can you compare words to intelligence, to wisdom? It's so much more of a higher quality. He's going to say, no. When the Torah wants to speak about a human being, you know what? What's the name the Torah refers to a human being? Medaber, the speaker. That means the highest quality of the human is not the intellect. We don't call the human the intelligent one. It would make sense that the human species would be called the intelligent species. I mean, I hope so. Not all. We can question that. No, but but still, at least the human being has a capacity that God did not command the human to make an effort to be stupid. If people choose that, they choose that. We have the ability to be intelligent, but yet that's not the name that expresses the greatness of the human. It's the Torah chooses the fact that we can speak. We have language. What do we see from here? That speaking and language really is a higher power than the wisdom and the intelligence or the emotions or the richness of the internal human experience of intellect and emotion that the human conveys in their words. The words are greater than that. And that's because although words happen on the more external aspect of the human being, Chassidus teaches us something crazy, that those letters really originate in the deepest core of your soul, higher than your consciousness, higher even than your first intellectual insight. The letters come from a deeper place inside of you. It's just that they manifest on the outside, but they're really rooted from above the intelligence. And he's going to prove that idea in the next couple of lines. Because in their root, and that's by us down here below, and also in the divine scheme as well, the letters which serve as containers and vessels for intellect and emotions, the divine intellect and emotions, are really higher than the intellect and the emotions itself of God. What that really means is that the letters of the Torah are much higher than the Torah, than the concepts of the Torah, the holy letters. That's why the Baal Shem Tov was fascinated by the letters, because someone over here is missing the fact that when they're not going to be here Matzah Shabbos when I'm going to be telling stories of the great Tzaddik, Rabbi Yisroel of Alednik. So I'm going to share a story that this person is going to enjoy immensely. I hope so. The mother of this great tzaddik, the Veledniker, she was a very, very simple woman. But she was a very holy woman. An incredible, their holy Rabbi Yisroel of Velednik, who was an enormous godly man, an incredible miracle worker, and an awesome Hasidic Rebbe, lived in the days of the Tzemach Tzedek, just to put him in the time where he was. He was a contemporary of the author that we're reading his book now. So this Rabbi Yisroel of Alednik once had a woman by him that he spoke to her because she was there was rumors about her that she was not behaving like a righteous Jewish woman. So he spoke to her and he got her to realize the mistake she made, and that he gave her a way of tshuva. And she accepted. And then she says to the Veledniker, she right away was ambitious. She said, okay, I accept upon myself so and so and so. And he showed her. She says, but I want to have children like you. She had the guts to say that, even though he just reprimanded her. And now she's coming back. She says, I want to have a children like, not like your children, but children like you. So he says, for that you have to be like my mother. If you'll be like my mother, you can have children like me. So she says, okay, how was your mother? So he related to her this story. He said, when I was 9 years old, my mother passed away. She called me, and she was on her deathbed, and she called me, she says, Cyrillical, she said, bring me a Hebrew book. Bring me a sefer. Bring me a book. I said, which book should I bring you? She said, anyone. I was very shocked, I said, because I knew my mother was so simple. She didn't know how to read she didn't know how to read. She said her blessings by heart because she was taught. She had no idea how to read Hebrew. She was so simple. Every day, he says, this is a separate story, she would go down to the cellar. Even though it was freezing cold, she would go to the cellar and say her blessings, brachas, in the morning in the cellar. Why? She said, in the house, sometimes there's garbage and there's things that, it was a small, probably poor house, they had garbage, that sometimes it's not so clean. It's not befitting to say a blessing to God in a place that's not clean. The cellar I know is clean. So she would always, even though it was freezing, her blessings had to be said in a place that she felt was honorable to speak to God. But anyway, she tells her son to bring a book. He was wondering, he said, like, which book? She said, any. So he takes out a big Rif. A Rif is a big sefer that's a commentary on the Talmud right? She brings him this big, that's almost like bringing his mom like Masechtas Baba Basra, like these big old ancient Talmuds, like a big book. And he brings his mother the book. She opens the book and she says, holy God, she said. I don't know how to read. She said, she didn't say holy God. She said, holy Torah. She says, your letters are so holy. I don't know how to say a prayer, even what to say. I want the book with the holy letters to formulate the proper prayer. The letters should formulate the proper prayer that my son should be an Erlich Yid, that my son should grow up to be a God-fearing Jew. And this was her last prayer. And she said, I don't know how to pray, but the holy book has holy letters. So she said, let the letters form together. Let the book itself produce letters that would be a prayer for my. She knew she's leaving her son. Her husband died also. She was the only parent, and now she's leaving her son without anybody. She was afraid. Who knows? She knew he was super special. So she made this prayer. I remember that now because we're talking about the holy letters. That the holy letters of the Torah are even holier than the Torah itself. So who connected deeper to the book, the Holy Rif? The great scholars who learned the Rif and understood the content of what the Rif is saying, and they can say 5-hour deep chidushim, novel, deep thoughts on what the Rif's understanding of the Talmud was, and were they the ones who connected more to the Rif's book, or the simple lady who couldn't even read one line over there, but she said the holy letters, the holy letters, the holy letters. It's a real Shlomo Carlebach type of story. But this is the quality. It's the understanding of the holiness of the Torah. So now he's going to explain it to us from a Chabad perspective. It means with an intellectual understanding why the letters are so holy. This lady didn't know this explanation. She was simple. She didn't have to know the explanation. But we are going to be merit now that we're going to learn the explanation of why the letters of the Torah are so great. They are higher than the in their source. The wisdom of the Torah is of a much lesser quality than the holy letters of the Torah. That's in the source. Al derech mashal, by way of analogy, chaf beis oisit hagashmiyim, and we're going to use the human experience of letters to explain the divine experience of the letters. So in a human being, we find that our physical ability to say words and letters, hayotzim, that go out through the 5 powers of speech, which produce aleph, ches, ayin, hey. We know ayin. Aleph, ches, hey, ayin. These are 4 letters, which are all guttural letters. They come from the throat. And chulu, then there are letters that come from the lips, and the letters that come from the palate, and so forth. So 5 categories from where letters come from. So these letters, now we might think, this is where God created God created a perfect soundboard in which airflow can go into the mouth And when it goes into the mouth, with the whole structure of the jaw, the mouth, the palate, the tongue, the teeth, and the ear, how do you say different letters? It's when the ear flows through your mouth based on the movement of the mouth, the holding together, the pulling, closing your mouth, lips, opening your lips. All these things produce letters. So we might think that letters happen in the physical mouth. But the Alter Rebbe already comes up in Tanya with this enormous idea, and he says that's not true. Because it's not like a musical instrument where the instrument creates the music. You would say that the mouth is designed that it should create the sounds. He says it's not that case. Because if that would be the case, it would take us a long time to learn how to talk. And we would have to, in the earlier times when we're talking, you would see a child suddenly learns how to talk and say words, but it's not like they go with their mother besides someone who has a speech impediment, needs to go to a speech therapist to help him talk. But most people don't need that. It happens naturally. And when it happens naturally, you don't sit there and practice the bass for like months at a time, forcing the wind through. He says there's no conscious thought at all in that whole process. So you have to say, he says, because the letters don't start over here. The letters really, the letter bays is a spiritual life force. It's something very deep. It's a letter. It's a letter in your soul. It's a spiritual dynamic. When that letter comes out and wants to express itself, it moves into the mouth, and yes, it directs the mouth. It's the letter itself that goes into the jaw and pulls the lips together to say a base. It's not the mouth that creates the letter. It's the letter that helps the mouth verbalize that in a physical form. It's like a certain soul that embodies itself. The letter itself has a soul of the letter. That soul emerges from the spiritual soul of the human, very, very high up in the soul. And those energies, those spiritual letters, which are like a neshama, grabs a physical form in the mouth. So of course the mouth is contributing to the creation of the letter, but the letter exists before you utter it in the mouth. It doesn't begin over here. And that's the reason why you don't have to have concentration when it happens automatically, because in a certain maturity in life, when you become like 1.5 to 2 years or 2, whatever that age, every person a little different, this particular faucet, imagine like a faucet, gets turned on. Till then it's locked. There's a certain time when God puts a timer into your soul. There's a certain level of maturity in which that button is flipped on. The letters of the soul are released. And once those letters are released, they automatically can talk their talk. Just the way it works. It takes a certain sensitivity. I remember when I was hearing this concept in the early days when I was learning Chassidus, I wasn't comfortable with it. It was bugged me. It bugged me. But now it's like so clear to me that it's that way. There's not even a question. I remember having an argument with a speech therapist about this. Because they were like, no. And I was saying, it's not true. The letters are there prior. And of course, when someone is having an impediment, you need to help synchronize their physical body with the spiritual letters. But if the whole weight of creating letters would be over here, would be in the physical, they would need to be. And more than that, it's not only that the Alter Rebbe's Chiddush is that not only are the letters a spiritual concept that exists in the spiritual dynamic of the soul, but that they are pre-intellect. Because if they would be post-intellect, which means it would be a product of the intellect, it would require human thinking and intelligence. The mind would have to be in concentration mode to produce words. The fact that it flows so naturally is an indication that it's a pre-intellect energy, and therefore the intellect has nothing to contribute to it. The intellect just has to get out of the way and let those letters come through. Now, once those letters come through, the intellect actually takes a ride on those letters. Because the intelligence now packages itself in the letters. And that's how the intellect gets formulated in a way that it could be expressed to others. But the letters themselves are pre-intellect. Deep concept, rich concept, but it gives us also a tremendous value. And so he's going to explain Gewalt. He's going to explain that's why when you are practicing Judaism and living a Jewish life, a Torah life, you get to use your mouth a lot. There is a lot of talking going on in Judaism. Yeah, a lot of words. And sometimes it becomes like a little bit, what do I have to say all this? And what's the value? I'm anyways not concentrating. My head is not here. So much. Give me 2 lines to say of prayer every day. I'll say it, thank you, Hashem. I'll say it in English. I'll say such a beautiful, I'll make up my own piece of poetry. And I'll just sing it in the morning, and that will be my prayer. It'll be more effective on me. And it's true, you should make your own poetry and you should sing to God and do that. But that does not substitute the holy words of the Siddur. You should be saying, very highly recommended to say the holy, holy letters of prayer, because there's something powerful about these letters that is so divine and so godly and so holy. On its own right, even when you're not filling it with kavana, which means with internal concentration. The letters themselves are of super value, as we're going to learn. So he says, when these letters come forth, they're not born in the mouth, through the movement of the lips, or the tongue, the tenuas agorin, or the movement of the throat, like it would be with a guitar, a violin, or any other trumpet, flute. With the sounds are created in the instrument. It's the airflow. It's a certain wisdom that whoever came up with these musical instruments, whoever was able to understand the science of airflow, working through certain sound, being flowed through a tube, being let out the hole over here, and so on and so on, and hitting it like this, creates this sound. There it's really created in the instruments. But over here, it's not created in the instruments. They start way earlier, even in the superconscious of the human being. There's a lineup of letters, 22 letters. And those 22 letters are equal in all languages. It's just, nuanced differently. But the essential letters, sounds, the ta, or the sh, or the l sound, the l, these are all essential letters in all languages. Now, like the person who's playing with a kinnor, a harp, through him strumming on the strands. Over here, it's not that way. The imkain, just like it takes you a long time to play the violin and the harp, it should take us a couple of years till we can utter a sentence. The person would have to go through immense exercises to move their lips. When you want to speak the letters Beis, Vav, Mem, Pei, and when you want to say the letters associated with the tongue, you should move your tongue. Dalid, Tes, Lamed, Nun, Taf. And I'll tell you the truth. If you think about the science of the difference of saying duh and ta, do that for a second. Duh and ta. What are you doing differently? There might be a tiny more pressure on the ta than when you're doing duh. A little more. It's a little more force that the tongue is hitting the teeth. But the measured amount of pressure, a person should spend at least 3 months practicing that. They're trying to say the duh. No, it came out again, a duh. Who's learning that slight nuance of pressure? It's the same as also ba and ma and ba. Here you're putting the pressure on the inside of the lips, and here a little bit more on the outside. It's like the violin. But in the violin, you practice these tiniest, smallest little movements of the, I don't know what it's called. What's the stick of the violin called? The bow. Moving at the tiniest, slightest angle, hitting the thing. It takes years to perfect that. It doesn't take us years to perfect the letters. In Yiddish, it's 1, 2, 3. It happens instantly. It's because the letters have a life of their own. They're doing their own thing. The letters are coming out because they already exist already. They control the lips. When they get into the mouth, they control the lips. It's almost like they take over the mouth. And they move the lips in accordance to what the letter needs to say. On the same, and we see she'enoi kain. It's not so. She'enoi yotzes b'li shum kavana. The person doesn't concentrate at all. Mekavanas ba'adam lani alash. And imagine how this class would be like 30 hours long if I had to sit there and try to bring out a letter. It doesn't work that way. It's long enough as it is. Or the lips. Ela inyan, the idea is the opposite. Shebe'emes adarabba. It's on the contrary. Oisi is dalef tes lamed nun tav. These 5 letters that are tongue letters, manias asalashin. The letters move the tongue, not because you move your tongue. That's why you say the letter. Ubeis vav mempe esas fasayim. These are the letters that move the lips. When this letter wants to come out in a revealed way, with an expression in the mouth, because these letters exist already completely finished, even before you said those words. And these letters are set and kavua. They are embedded in the nefesh itself, in the soul itself. The letters, the soul is filled up with letters. The soul has in its arsenal these 22 letters. Not less and not more. You can't invent a new letter. Do you know that? Since the world was created, no one invented it. No one invented a new letter. The same 22 letters we've been speaking for thousands of years in all languages. It's just the way you put it together that creates the difference in the language, and then some slight variations. But in general, no one ever created original letters because God set 22 letters and zehu zeh. You can't create it. And it's in all the 70 languages, shall ayin ummos of the 70 nations, all across the world. Even people that didn't have connections to each other. People who lived in everybody has the same, even though the language is different, but the letters are the same. And how do they reveal themselves? In the mouth, who are they? For that you have a place that facilitates that passage of sound with the right equipment that the letters need to the vehicle that the letter needs to move out through physical expression and physical sound. Aleph ches ayin hey mizgalim begarin. The aleph, the ches, the ahay and the ayin reveal themselves in the throat. Ubeis vav mem pei bisvasayim in the lips. Ukesharoitzel adaber beis vav mem pei yoitzim elu oisiyos elu mikviyasam nefesh. These letters are emerging from the soul effortlessly. And they move that particular part of the body. They stimulate that element in the mouth. That's a vessel that is designated for them. Automatically. Leave it up to these letters. They know how to drive. They're going to come right out, and don't mess with them. The least, more than that, you start concentrating on how you're going to say letters, you lose the ability to talk. It's the least you just let it happen on its own. People that I think that stutter might have a problem because they're trying too hard, and that's what creates some kind of a blockage. Again, I'm not a speech expert, so I can't tell you on that, but the person does not need to have intentions on how they will move the vessel. All you need to say is, I want to say this concept, and the words are downloading and it's coming. This is what he wants to say. And then the letters, they move the mouth the way they want. And based on, now we'll understand what it says. And the person became, when God created the human, it says, God blew into his nostril a soul of life, and the person became a living being. Nefesh chaya, a living being. That is a very deep interpreted meaning over here. The Targum says, Targum Onkelos, that's the translation of in Aramaic that we have by a Roman convert called Onkelos. When he translated the Torah, he wrote on these words, L'nefesh chaya, l'ruach memalala, to a talking spirit. That means the human being became a talking spirit, implying the greatness of the human is that they can talk. But is it, in addition to that being this greatness of the human that they can talk, but there's another point over here, that it uses the word nefesh chaya, a living soul. Chaya, we know the neshama. In mystical teaching, we know that there are 5 levels of life in a human. There is there's nefesh, the soul has 5 names. Nefesh, ruach, neshama, chai, yechida. Nefesh, ruach, neshama are internal powers. Chai and yechida are encompassing energies in the soul. So the nefesh is associated more with the motory skills of the person, action. The ruach is more the power that motorizes the body, the very physical life. The ruach is the living energy of a person that's associated with emotion. Neshama is intellect. Chaya is a force of life that's higher than intellect. Now watch this. The Targum says, the translation says, on the word l'ruach chaya, emphasizing this level of soul called chaya, which is above intellect, as l'ruach mamalala, the ruach, the spirit that talks. So what do we see from here? That talking comes from the chaya element of your soul. Chaya element means it's higher than neshama. It's completely beyond your intelligence. And therefore, intelligence doesn't create it. Intelligence doesn't make it. Intelligence can help filter what you're going to say, but the words themselves are above the intelligence. And then the intelligence, once the words passes through the world of intelligence, the intelligence utilizes these letters to enter into these letters, to catch a ride in these letters, so to speak, so that the intelligence can now be verbalized and come to communication to someone else. But the letters themselves are not a product of the intellect. As he says, because they come from the chaya element in a person's soul, which is above intelligence, in the soul. The intellect comes on the level of soul called neshama. Like it says, v'nishmas, where do we find that an intellect and understanding comes from the level of neshama? It says, v'nishama is shakai, and the souls of shakai, which is one of God's names, tevinem, you make them understand. So we see from here that that bina, which is understanding, has to do with neshama. But letters come from a level that's above neshama. It's the letters b'machshava v'dibur. Now the letters don't, first of all, for sure don't begin in the mouth, because we think in language as well. We think with words. Thought is also letters. So you see there's more, but they're more spiritual letters. But even the thought and the speech, the letters don't originate much deeper, even deeper than in a very subconscious place, in a superconscious place, above the mind. From the chaya to the left. Oh, very good. Nefesh chaya implies both levels. Chaya implies where the letters are coming from. Nefesh implies the manifestation of it, because the lowest level of soul is called nefesh. That's where speech actually happens. The actual speech happens in the level of nefesh, but the source of speech happens from chaya, from a very high level. That's why you watch how the words of Torah and the choice of words that the sages use are so accurate. It says in the Book of Formation, an early Kabbalistic book, many attribute to Abraham. He wrote that book. So it says in that holy book that God created the world with 22 letters, and then God took those 22 letters, the kavan, and he established them bepeh, in the mouth. Now the word, he doesn't say he forms them in the mouth, he establishes them in the mouth. He sets them into the mouth. What that means is they're not of the mouth. They're just set in the mouth, where from the mouth is where they become audible to other people. Their essence is coming from a much higher level of soul, from the level of chaya. Now, just like this applies to the human experience, the same is true in the divine as well, because God created us in his image. Over there as well, there is the actual words of God. That's in the level called nefesh. That's malchut. Malchut is the lowest attribute, kingship. That's where God engages in speech, creates the world through speech. That's through kingship, the lowest level of the divine. And above it is the emotions, the 6 emotions, which are the sphirot above the malchus, called ze'er anpin. Above that is chachma and bina, powerful illumination of the divine intelligence, way, way, way above the world of words. But what the secret over here is that the letters that are in malchut really stem from above chachma and above bina. They come from the level of Keter, the crown, the infinite light above, the encompassing lights. And that's why they're higher than the Torah. Meaning higher than the concepts of the Torah, than the wisdom and the intelligence of the Torah, the letters of the Torah. Just like it is in the letters of a human being, in compared to the person's wisdom. Derech said the same also applies adruma milas, on all the levels above. And he's going to give an example. Before we speak about God and God's words, first let's talk about spiritual beings, angels. Angels also communicate with words. Their words are not audible to us because they're much more refined. But it's like, imagine our thoughts. That's the way angels converse with each other, through thinking. Their words are like us thinking, that's how but they can hear thoughts. So that's how and that's called for them speech. So what do we find? Because angels also have language and letters. Talmud says in the beginning of the 3rd chapter of Masechtas Brachos, Daf Yud Ches Amud Beis, Shtei ruchos mesapres, that there are 2 spirits that were talking to each other. The guy went and stayed in the cemetery. You heard a conversation going between the spirits. So this is like level of angels. These are not they're spiritual beings, not embodied in bodies, and yet they spoke. But by them it's also the same way. Their ability to speak comes from the essence of their soul. Ba'atzmiyus nafsham, it's rooted in the essence of their soul. Higher than their wisdom. What I might ask a question over here is, if angels can talk, and angels are called beasts and animals, why don't animals have speech? I would say, okay, animals have a form of communication. Yeah, whales make their sounds, and frogs croak, and dogs bark, and birds chirp, and these are all forms of communication and language, but not real language of letters. And if that's the case, if the source of the animals are the spiritual source of them are angels, so why does that not translate? And they have speech. Why does that not translate down here in their physical incarnation? I don't know. It's a good question. But Ella, nevertheless, it seems like it's a human thing. So Ella she'im kol zeh But just like in the human speech, even though the source of the letters are above intelligence, but then they become the servant of the intelligence, and they're below. In the practical sense, they are a lower power in the person. And then they become utilized by the higher powers of the soul that enclose themselves in these letters. It becomes a garment for the wisdom to dress itself, for the intelligence to dress itself in the letters. And without these garments, we can't grasp any idea. Without thought, you can't grasp any intellectual idea. You have to think words. So you see that to grasp an abstract concept, even if it's not so abstract, but it's abstract compared to letters, you can't without words. Why? And the reason it is that way by a human is because they're so high. Now he's saying another point. Very, very wonderful idea. He's saying that the ability to be able to garb something, you have to be higher than the thing that you're garbing. It says that the source of a person's clothing is higher than the soul itself. That's why clothing are very powerful. Because spiritual source of clothing are higher than the thing that they enclose. So even though down here, clothing is just a utility for the person, but really the soul of the clothing is really higher than the person. So if letters and words are garments to ideas, it's because they come from a place higher than the ideas that they are garbing. As we know, we know a concept in Kabbalah that the external level of a higher level lowers itself down and becomes the garment for a lower level to reveal itself. Such as a teaching in Arizal, B'drush HaChashmal, a special drush called Chashmal, which over there talks about angels, that they are garments and they come from a very high place. In a different mitzvah, the mitzvah of circumcision, he has a few pages to discuss the concept of chashmal, which is this idea that an external level from a higher place becomes a garment for a lower. So too, the letters, which are coming from such a high place in the soul, become a utility and a garment for the lower powers of the soul, which is intellect and emotions. But now listen how beautiful this turns into Judaism and to our experiences. With this, we'll understand, Mashakamer Azal, the sages say that there is an angel called Metatron. Metatron, he's a super angel. One day, Hollywood is going to make a movie called Metatron. I don't know why I said that, but okay. Because it's a very cool angel. The angel Metatron. They should make it a good movie, a holy movie. It's going to be after Moshiach comes. Hollywood is going to become elevated, Holywood. So you then remember that we're going to do something like that. In any case, the angel Metatron, one of his occupations is that he collects all the prayers of the Jewish people, and he turns them he has a crown factory, and he with a whole assembly line, and every day him and his whole entourage of angels, they're busy tying big, beautiful crowns, and they make these crowns and they put it on God's head from the prayers of the Jewish people. Kosher, that's what it says. Sages say this. They say, I think the sages are pretty cool that they know what Metatron is doing, and that he has a crown factory where he makes fashions all these crowns for God, and God is very fashionable, so every day he has a different crown from all these different prayers, that the variations of prayers. But V'cheinu b'Zohar. Now the Zohar says something similar. B'shalach nu chesam beis, that Metatron makes crowns. But so you'd think he's making those crowns from what? From the heartfelt emotion that you have in the prayer, from your deepest gratitude that you have in your prayer, from the great enlightenment that you've perceived in your prayer, from your deep meditation. No. From the simple letters and words. You have the bubbies and the simple, that are sitting there saying Tehillim all day long. It's those holy words. They have no idea even sometimes the simple meaning of those words, because they never learned Hebrew, don't know what it means, or that. They just say, they just got used to saying, and they say and say all. It's these that are priceless. Because these are the diamonds and the jewels and the gems that the angels sit there and are busy making crowns for God. But now, this is a beautiful thought. Maybe we should just leave it in its simplicity before we give a deeper instead, because it's so beautiful just in its simple form to realize that. Now to the depth, the Chabad understanding of it. So what does he explain? What do you mean a crown? What did we say over here? Where do letters come from? They come from a place beyond intellect. Intellect is the head. What's the crown? What sits above the head? That means that letters really come from where? From here, from above the skull. In the human. When we say holy letters, and our letters really, the fact that we have 22 letters, who created language? God created these 22 letters. And these 22 letters exist in all the spiritual world. Same 22 letters. There's only 22. And even God uses these 22 letters. Obviously, his speech is on levels that we have no comprehension of what it means, his speech. But it's still these 22 letters. And it's the origins of our 22 letters. So when we speak holy letters, somehow our letters, as we're soon going to see the process, it's a whole assembly line. Because the letters that we speak are very physical. So they start getting kissed. It's amazing. If we would see this, we wouldn't stop praying. We set off a whole motion of gazillions of angels who kiss our words. And he's going to explain that the Zohar says that every word you speak in davening gets kissed by angels. What the kissers do is they take these letters, they polish them through the kiss. So the letters stop being so physical and becomes more shiny and more spiritual. And then it gets uploaded to a higher level and it gets kissed by a higher angel. So it becomes a more spiritual form of a letter. Same letter that you spoke. Suddenly you think, you said Baruch Sha'amer and Ashrei. If you'll see that same Baruch Sha'amer and Ashrei coming out at the end up there, you would die from how brilliant those letters are, what kind of shining lights they are. But eventually they hook up with God's letters and they go all the way up to where God's letters come from. God's letters come from above God's intellect. And that's what it means. It's crowns on his head. On God's heads. Tell this to Esther Roth and forget about it. The amount of Tehillim that she's going to... Gewalt. And now we'll understand how this mother of the great Tzedek said, the holy book, make your own letters. How do I know what these letters are? Formulate. Scrabble the letters together for me. Because the letters of their root is from beyond wisdom. Canal. Keser. It's really from the level of crown. Eli. Gashmi. Because a person's speech is physical. In order for it to be elevated upward, is through angels. These angels are more spiritual. And their speech is like our thought. And their thought is even more refined. And that's a lower angel. And in the higher angel, it goes higher and higher. And what does it mean? One angel receives. What does it mean the angel receives our prayer? The letters that come out of a person's mouth, becomes absorbed in the letters. It's like, what you do? A lot of times you speak into AI and you say, make this into a cohesive sentence. And AI in a second bounces it back to you and makes it into a beautiful paragraph. Similar to that, imagine the angel being the godly AI. It takes your words and polishes it, and then it becomes such a most poetic, beautiful word. So it's shining and brilliant, and then that angel passes it to a higher angel who re-AIs it again and makes it even more brilliant, and so it goes all the way up. And through this it becomes refined. It divests itself from its physicality, and they become one with the substance of the letters of the angel. This is what it says in Zohar. Gafifla, he hugs it, v'noshikla, and he kisses the letters. The angels kiss the letters of what we speak. What's a kiss? A kiss is when two peoples lock their breath with each other. So we have our breath. Words, letters are spoken through breath. But our breath is human breath coming from a human body, so it's physical. When our kiss locks with the angel, see, you never thought that you're kissing angels when you're praying. See, it's all these gewaldic ideas. And they're just sitting there and you're locking with spirits, and they're not meant to be in between you and God in any way, but they're just that purification. They take these letters and rise them up, and they're beautiful angels. They're not annoying angels. These are the really, really, really beautiful ones. And this goes into the angel, just like when someone kisses their friend, bepiv, in their mouth. One person's breath enters into the other person's breath. They become one. And then higher and higher, Shomer, it goes through a whole system of elevation. This angel, elevates it to a higher angel, and then higher and higher, until it reaches to the super angel, to the general of all of them. That's Malach Metatron. Metatron is the highest angel. He gives the final finish. He kisses them all into himself, and then produces it on a way. And he refines it so high that it's able to enter the divine realm. Because angels are not divine, they're still creatures. Then it enters into the divine. Becomes so refined that it can enter to their ultimate source from where these letters come from, Keser, to the level of the crown that sits on God's head. Because in Keter is where the letters begin. It's explained in the mitzvah of vows, why vows are so powerful when we utter a promise or a vow. But you have to be there for this. And this is the meaning of Koishik Sarim Lakono, that the Malach ties crowns to his maker. Now we'll also understand Gewalt, why prayer can change reality. We know that the main mitzvah of prayer is that when we have a situation which we're not happy about, God forbid someone is ill, I want to make this learning now for a miracle for someone who I want a big blessing for a refuah. Menachem Mendel ben Miriam should have a complete refuah shalema. So now that we're talking about the power of prayer, so we should have all the prayer in our mind. You should have a refuah. That itself is the prayer. So now, So how does prayer work? God created the world in a certain way, based on God's idea of what the creation and God's understanding of how the world needs to be, based on a billion gazillion calculations, that everything should work out perfectly to the end goal of creation. Everything is exactly the way it is. The famous story that they say about the Alter Rebbe when it was, I heard this not in Chabad. I never heard the story in Chabad, so I don't know if it's a true story. What I mean to say is, I don't know if it's a reliable source. Maybe it was with a different tzaddik, because I'm surprised I didn't hear it from Chabad. And maybe it is. Maybe you did hear it as a Chabad source. I feel like if this... Anyways, the story goes, when I heard it, when I wasn't in Lubavitch, even before I came, I heard that the Alter Rebbe, when he was a kid, was once debating with some other kid. And the other guy was saying that, basically they were saying, if they were God, how would they run the world? And the other kid was saying how he would make that all the people should be wealthy and all the people this, and you should remove all the illness, and the Jewish people should not be persecuted anymore. And he like fantasized an incredible, beautiful world. And then the Alter Rebbe said it, and he said, "What happens if you were God? What would you do? Show me what could you better than me? If better if I was God." He said, "If I was God, I would have it exactly as it is." Obviously, if I was God, I would understand that the way it is, that's the way it's best to me. It needs to be this way. Because if it could have been any other way, it would have been any other way. This is the way it needs to be. So then, how do we have the chutzpah to come and pray? What's prayer? In our prayer, we're saying to God, we don't like the way the situation is. And we want to change. We're not happy with the fact that you can't pay the bill. I'm not happy with the fact that there's a drought. I'm not happy with the fact that whatever. And I want something to change. And you say, and if God commands us to pray, it's because prayer works. And we know that prayers are change and can bring about a change and make things. We say, there's always the idea, my prayer was heard. So the question is, what's the power here? You're basically changing the entire system of existence. The answer is, it's the words of the prayer that is all the power. It's the fact that you're verbalizing with holy letters, with those letters. Because why? Letters go all the way up on the crown. The crown is the level of the will. And with willpower, you can change your mind. For example, if you have an understanding that something something is supposed to be so and so, but you really, 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 really want it to be differently. So you can change your way you're thinking about it based on the way your want. Want is higher. Desire is higher than intellect. Now, there are certain objective truths that you can't change. But a lot of things can be seen this way or seen that way. And if you have a desire to see it, that's one of the reasons why bribery, we're just learning this in Rambam, why bribery is forbidden. Because when the judge is supposed to be impartial and supposed to be just coming from a purely intellectual place. If you give him a couple of dollars, pass him an envelope before the thing, even if he's trying to be honest, he wants you to win. He's favoring you. So he's going to come up with brilliant explanations of why it should be that way. Had you not slipped in that envelope, he might have sided with the other side. His intelligence would have kind of seen it that way. Gave him the bribery. Now he's looking out for you, and he'll come up with a good. He's not going to say, forget the law, just make it your way. He'll come up with an explanation, and it will make sense. Because what you see from here is that the mind can be twisted, can turn this way and that way. It depends how you look at something. And bring the same judgment in front of three judges, and let's say they're all honest, good people, they'll come to a different conclusion because you can look at the same situation differently. So when we say God, the world is the way it is, that this person is sick, God forbid, and this person is poor, and this person is childless, and this person can't find their bashert, and they're lonely or whatever. The thing is suddenly stuck over here a little bit. Oh, back on. That situation is because, why is that way? It's that way because God's intelligence, we'll say a little prayer that this should be healed. Eberster, please heal my stream over here. Okay, God, please. Let's. People want to listen. That would be really nice if people can listen and not get this black circle all the time. Okay, better. Any case. So if things are in a certain way, it's because for whatever reason God wants it that way. Because his intellect, Hashem runs the world through his intelligence. His intellect tells him that that's the right way. That's the way things need to be. The cosmic intelligence. But we can get God to change his intelligence. And you know how you get him to change his intelligence? You spark his desire above his intelligence. And how can you get up into his desire above his intelligence? The words, the letters. The letters trigger on a place higher than the intellect. And can reconstruct the intellect. Powers of power of Tehillim, power of the letters, power of the prayers, of the words. Through prayer, a person affects that which they're praying for. There should be a change in Hashem's will. That the ill person should be healed. Even though, according to the earlier will that was drawn into God's wisdom, and was shining through the wisdom, through God's intelligence. That itself was the cause for the illness, because nothing else, there's no other cause in the world other than God's desire that this is the way it needs to be. And if it's this way, it's because that's the wisdom of Hashem is calling for the world to be situated in a way that these details need to be X, Y, and Z. Kain al pi Torah. It's based on the Torah. Sha'achet, for example, it could be a sin. Could be that there's a sin, and the sin, in order for the sin to be removed or whatever, there needs to be pain, and the person has to find himself in not, God forbid, in not a good situation. Sha'achet goyrim, that the sin is causing, ki yadu asher en yisurim b'lo, like the sages say, that whenever there is pain, it's because there's some kind of a sin, or some kind of a deficiency, spiritual deficiency. So therefore, the way that is healed or repaired is through maybe a certain lack of something. Im kol zeh aydei atfila, but that you can change that, because through prayer, shemegaz bekeser, the prayer arrives into the keter. It rises shalamayla ma'achachma shebetorah, that's above the wisdom of the Torah. Nimshach ratzon chadash, you can draw a new will, l'rapes achayla, to heal the ill. Kishamu rachmem pshutim, because over there it's beyond all calculations. And over there you can elicit a new will, and that will can change the dynamics of the entire world. Remember we learned the story I said the other day, that God said to the sage, if you want me to destroy the entire world and recreate it, maybe you will be born, you'll luck out to be born in a moment of that, to fit, see how that story fits over here. But here's the thing, we think we only credit prayer usually. Oh, it was such a heartfelt, I cried, it was a heart-wrenching prayer. I prayed with all my heart and all my soul and all my kavanah and all my intention, and then you feel you prayed. And if sometimes we're clogged and we're blocked and we would love to pray, but it's just our heart is not there, our mind is not there, and we think it's wasted prayer. But you're still praying because you know you need a Yeshua, you need God's help. He says no. The letters actually are the more powerful one. Of course, when those letters are accompanied by deep concentration and it can do its magic. But what even delivers the request and the petition up to where it could be changed, it's through the powers of the letters. It's meaning, if you thought your prayer just with thought and you're not verbalizing, putting it into words. Now, thought is also letters, but here we're talking about primarily letters of speech. Shamoitzi bepiv, that you emanate from your mouth. Shemegas ada keser, that reaches all the way up into the crown. Kenis Galiel. Omi sham, and from there, mamshiches aharasai v'reishes agiloi. It draws down a new illumination and the beginning of revelation. And it brings down a new will, and that first, where is it going to reveal itself, is in Chachma, is in God's wisdom. It will create by God a new epiphany of how he can make the entire cosmos work when he tweaks this and that, and yet everything can still work out. A new idea. Like we said earlier. And that's why there's a law in Torah, the codifiers of Torah gave a law. They hit lav kedibur dami, that just thinking the prayers don't work. It's not considered speech. You don't fulfill your obligation. v'kuf pei v'kuf aleph, ibamagen Avram sham suf kuf beis. If you look in all these places, in Archaim Siman Samach Beis, and in Siman Kuf Pei and in Siman Kuf Aleph, and also in the commentary Magen Avram, well, all those places they discuss this idea that thinking does not do the trick. You have to, in order to fulfill your obligation in prayer, you have to say the words. So similar to the power of the letters of prayer that have such potency and power because of where letters come from, similar to that is in the letters of the Torah as well. See, there's these letters of prayer, there's letters of Torah. Sometimes we once said that the letters of prayer are called female horses, and the letters of Torah are called male horses. Because letters of Torah are male horses because they're bringing God down, and letters of prayer are lifting us up. So it's like different type of, it's like couriers. We once discussed the whole idea of horses. Amazing. So but both of them have letters, but over here it's also the quality that the letters of the Holy Torah are holier than the Torah itself. In the letters of the Torah, they too are rooted in Keser. It's higher than the wisdom of Torah. Why? The intelligence of Torah, notwithstanding the awesome infinity of God's intelligence, because the Torah emanates from wisdom, as stated in Zohar. But the letters, and the letters, Meloshen Asa, the letters, the Hebrew word for otiyot is the word asa, and asa is in Aramaic. The meaning of that word is, asa means to bring forth. Biyav hamshacha, to bring something forth. Shan hamshacha is because what the letters do is that they bring the Torah down into expression. And not only are they garments, yeah, of course, the letters are garments through which we understand the ideas of the Torah. But not just that. Because these letters are really above the Torah, they push the Torah out. They enable the Torah's light to come shining down because these letters are really from a place above the Torah. Just like the letters of prayer can influence the wisdom, to change the wisdom, the letters of Torah can influence the wisdom from the wisdom being hidden and abstract and not accessible to humans, for that light to come down and reveal itself in the world. So we should have enormous illumination of God's wisdom. You need to have letters. The letters conduct all these energies. It's through them, it's these amshachas that through them, nimshach liyas Torah. The Torah gets drawn downward. Because why do you need to push the letters out? He's going to explain, because the Torah is so lofty and therefore so inaccessible. And the fact that the Torah does make its way down into our world is really impossible. It's going against the loftiness and holiness and abstraction of how high it is. How can it reveal that? It's the letters that drive the Torah down. The Torah is called the ancient parable. And what does it mean it's the ancient parable? One of the explanations is it's an ancient parable, but there's another explanation. It's a parable for the ancient one. The entire Torah is coming to give us what is a parable? When you have something very deep that you can't understand, a good teacher gives a parable. So when God, the ancient one, which is the God himself, who's utterly unknowable, wants us to know him, he gives us a parable. What's the parable? The Torah. So the Torah is a parable to the ancient one. If it's a parable to the ancient one, it's basically by knowing the Torah, you know God. That's it. That is so. How can such a Torah come down into our tiny, puny, physical human brains? If it's the parable on God, and God vests himself completely in the Torah, how in the world? For that, there is the letters of the Torah that help the Torah downward. The Inyan and the ideas Kiyamashal Inyan Achar. the mashal, when you use a parable, the parable is something else. It's not of the substance of what it is a parable for. It's usually quite distant. Even though there is a great differentiation between the parable and the message that the parable is conveying, but nevertheless, through the parable, you get to a grasp in the thing itself. Through the parable, you get the nimshal, you get the idea. Because it has a certain comparison to, the parable has a certain comparability to that which it is trying to be a parable for. And it's similar to that is the Navi, the prophet, would grasp the substance of the divine, but how would he do it? Also, there was a parable. It says when prophecy would come, the Navi would see some kind of an image, some kind of a vision. But the vision was a parable through which God is enclothing himself to convey himself, because he himself is ungraspable, but through the parable we can get him. The sages compared a prophetic vision to an aspaklaria. What's an aspaklaria? Aspaklaria is like a glass you look through to be able to see something, whether it's a micro, it's an amplifying glass, what are they called? A magnifying glass, or or in this case, it's like a mirror. Just like when you're looking in a mirror. What you are seeing is not the thing, you're seeing a reflection of the thing. So too, when the Navi saw something which is a reflection of God. It's like a mashal. It says, me, God says, you can't see me and be alive. So therefore, no, how then does a prophet stay alive? Because he's seeing God through something, through a mirror. And that's why by King Solomon it says that he spoke 3,000 parables. What does that mean? Since the Torah is a parable for God, so when we study Torah, we're getting one level parable. Shlomo's understanding of Torah was so high that he understood the Torah on 3,000 levels. Every idea of Torah, he saw it so deep. We can look at it from the bottom up, and the bottom up. We can look at it the bottom up is that he studied the Torah and saw and understood it on a certain level. And then he realized that that's just a parable for a deeper understanding, and he probed deeper and he got the deeper understanding. And then he realized that deeper understanding is just a parable for a deeper understanding. And he kept on every word of every element of Torah, he climbed up 3,000 parables. Or it works the other way. When he perceived it on the top. In order for him to explain it to us, he had to give 3,000 parables. Each one. He gave a parable, and that wasn't enough, so he had to give a parable for the parable, and he had to give 3,000 levels till he brought it down to so both of them could be how it works. It's both probably true. Like when it comes to sacrifices, which is a very physical law, it's an animal, and he would explain, an animal, what's the animal symbolizing? What is it a parable for? He would say, Ma'u chelev, what is the fat? Ma'u dam, what is the blood? Because in the laws of sacrifices, the Torah gives you the ritual of the fat, certain parts of the animal goes on the altar, the blood gets sprinkled on the altar, and so forth. Ma'u kohen, he would say, you think a kohen is just a physical incarnation of a kohen? Do you understand the spiritual? The kohen is a parable for a spiritual energy. Ma'u bigdei kahuna, what are the garments of the kohen? And when he explained the spiritual, he said, no, but it's really higher than that. Beruchnius, He grasped 3,000 levels higher and higher on each idea. In every element of Torah. Where every level is way above the thing that's lower. So much so that when he thought he grasped it, and it was like, wow, this is like it. Then he realized that this is a parable to something higher, and whatever he understood is only parable. And just like a parable is like totally foreign to what it's a parable for, but it's just enough connected that you can use it as a parable. So that's how each level was so beyond as he was going higher and higher. 3,000 levels. V'nikra gimel alafim mashal. It's called 3,000 mashal. Now, King Solomon reached 3,000 levels. How many are there really? Without an end. It goes on and on and on. So the Torah, the real Torah, the Torah at its very is a parable for Kadmono Shalom, for ultimately God's very self. You know how high that is. You know how far that is. You know how impossible to know. And yet that very same Torah comes down to us. Even the root of these parables, a billion gazillion levels away past King Solomon, is only considered a parable to Hashem himself. The infinite one, blessed to see literally. That is above, from this whole evolution of worlds. He's above filling the worlds, because the Zohar says God fills the worlds. But that's only a little tiny crumb of God, of his light. He is above filling the world. And he's above encompassing the world. And from that very, very beyond, from that place, the Torah comes down, lamata b'chachma, in wisdom, v'nikra mashal, and it's called a mashal, and a parable, to the ancient one of the world, which is God himself. What takes such a lofty Torah and pushes it down? You need the letters, or else the Torah would flee. It would be would be so elusive and so impossible. Canal. But the letters are able to do that because the letters are above even that holy wisdom. The letters are etched in the very essence above wisdom, even God's wisdom. This is what the sages say. And this is the meaning where it says that King David connected the supernal Torah to God. What does that mean? It means King David was able to draw down. He connected the Torah to Hashem. What that means is he drew down the letters from the Ein Sof itself into the Torah, to formulate the Torah, to bring the letters of the Torah, and thereby bringing Hashem himself down through the Torah. Mamish. And now we'll understand. Now we're circling back to Chanukah. And this is the meaning of Ner Mitzvah, first regarding mitzvahs and Torah. Mitzvah is the candle, and Torah, the lamp, and Torah is the light. How does the light of the abstract Torah get revealed down here? You need to have vessels. You need to have letters. And the letters, so first of all, our actions of mitzvahs are divine letters, vessels. Who are you? They ner mitzvah, through the lamp of a mitzvah. Which are the letters. The general concept of ner mitzvah are the letters element of Torah. It would seem like more, because we know that the main mitzvah, there's two things in Torah. There is the idea of knowing the Torah, and there's an idea of verbally speaking Torah. The main mitzvah of Torah, to fulfill the mitzvah, is to verbally speak it, not to know it. So you see, the mitzvah is connected more to the letters. Because mitzvah, again, is vessels. Letters are vessels. Because through the mitzvahs, they draw down the wisdom of Torah from its root, the ancient of the world. And that's why it's called a lamp. Just like a lamp is a vessel. Without that vessel of the cup that holds the oil, the wick, you can't have that light. That flame has nothing to hold on to. And when you have that vessel you're holding it, Shaboya or Derech, which through it the light burns, just like the letters are vessels. The Inyan, and the idea is, now what he wants to explain a little better. What does that have to do with mitzvahs? Okay, I got letters. What is mitzvahs? We said earlier that the letters are rooted in Keser. Mitzvahs are also rooted in Keser. There are 613 mitzvahs, and 7 rabbinic mitzvahs equals 620 numeric value Keser. So you see, it's the same idea of letters. Mitzvahs are also from the same place. So there's a certain equal quality to the letters of the Torah with the mitzvah, whatever the mitzvah is. The mitzvah to give tzedakah, the mitzvah to put tefillin, the mitzvah to have a mezuzah, whatever that is. As it is known, the mitzvahs are the supernal will above God's intellect. And this is great. We said that a lamp has a vessel, a cup, oil, and a wick. And then above that floats the fire. The fire is the whole point over here is to get that fire, but how do you get it down? So we were learning over here in order to have the flame, you need to have the other thing. So in order to have the mitzvah, but still the quality of the flame is greater than the oil. It's just that this enables. Where do you see in the flame, in the nair, where do you see in the lamp something that's in the lamp that's actually higher? Another component to the lamp that's actually higher than the flame. You wouldn't guess. There is something else in that lamp, other than the oil, other than the wick, and other than the cup. There is air, oxygen, the oxygen that surrounds the fire. And if you don't have oxygen, the fire goes out. If you cover a lamp, fire goes out immediately. If you don't touch the fire, you don't let air go in. Air in Hebrew is spelled avir, aleph, vav, yud, resh. You know what that is? It's the word or, which is light, with a yud in it, with an added yud. You know what that means? The yud that's added, or is light. That would be the flame. That's the or. Torah or, the Torah is the light. What's the yud? The yud is the energy of Keser that's higher than the light. That's the source of the light. We said earlier, it's the will that pushes the chachma out. So here you can literally see it in a lamp, that there's another component, an invisible component that till now we weren't analyzing. We were analyzing only the physical element of the lamp. There's a certain more invisible element, which is the air. That air is required. Without air, and the air surrounds the lamp. I'm sorry, it doesn't surrounds the lamp as well, but inside the lamp, surrounding the flame has to be air. And that air is indicative of the light of Keser that is higher than the illumination, than the actual chachma, which is illumination. Than the flame. The letter yud that's in the avir, kishemistalik nikra or. When the yud goes away, it's called or. Ki ayudu makara or. The yud is the source of the light, the sharshai, and the root of the light. And that's why a flame cannot burn. It needs to have air surrounding it. And when you suck out the air, the oxygen from a house, the lamps will extinguish. Even though if it's too much light in your house and you want it to be a little darker, you're allowed to put a plate down on a lamp, a burning lamp, but providing that you don't cover the air. You put it like this so it continues to burn, it's just that you're not benefiting from the light. So you're allowed to do so. But to put it on like this, you're not, because then you're causing it to extinguish. And extinguish is one of the prohibitions of Shabbos. If you're putting a ka'ara, a plate on top of a nair on Shabbos, you have to let some air get in. If not so, it's considered extinguishing. Like the Maayon Avram says in the end of Siman Reish Ayin Zayin. The Aver is like the letters that are higher than the wisdom, and with them and through them, Hunim Sheches is drawn. Chachma is called light, like we say Torah, Torah, which is wisdom, is light. Va'avir ubchinas Keser, and the air around it, that's the Keser, and that's the letters. As it is known, be'inyan avira dachya, like it speaks about this concept in Kabbalah called the pure air. V'sham shayrish mitzvos, and that's where mitzvos are rooted. Kana elachei nikra mitzvos b'shem tzedakah, and that's why all mitzvos are called tzedakah. Why are they called tzedakah? Like it says, we're holding on the last page over here. We'll be done in 15, 20 minutes. Like it says, that it will be considered a righteousness for us, kinishmar, when we will observe to do the mitzvot. So you see that all mitzvahs are called tzedakah. Why? What's the relationship? Tzedakah means charity. Why are all mitzvahs called charity? Tzedakah, what does tzedakah do? The main point of charity is you give to someone who doesn't have. That person feels very lowly because they feel like they're destitute. They have to come on to people. They're feeling low, and when you give them something, you extend kindness to them. You extend life to them. You're channeling life to this person. The kamei yizbarach. And so now, so when we give tzedakah, so God mimics the same thing. What's the whole intention of here? Hashem should share with us his wisdom. He should illuminate his light. We want him to send his Torah down to us. That to him, who are we? We're all lowly. All the worlds collect together with all the celestial beings, together with all the infinite, they're all nothing in front of God. So for God to share his Torah with nothing, with who? That's called enlivening the lowly spirit. So when Hashem shares the Torah with us, it's called tzedakah. Since mitzvahs are what generate that illumination, because they are the will that drives the wisdom down, causes the wisdom to emanate and to go down. That's why all the mitzvahs are called tzedakah. And what is, in other words, the mitzvah is stimulating the humility in God to want to descend to us. That's what the mitzvah is stimulating. What's his actual descent to us? Is that he's downloading. What is he downloading? He's downloading the Torah to us. He's giving us his wisdom. That is the light of the Torah. The mitzvah is the ear that pushes, that enables the light. Because light and flow is all one. And that's if a person says, I love the Torah and I only care about the Torah, but I'm only learning Torah, I'm not into observance. Fill a Torah, the sages say, if you say you only have Torah, even Torah you don't have. Because you need to stimulate, you have to put quarters in the when the kids go on those little amusement horsey or horse or whatever it is, or thing that's outside of, they don't have them anymore. We were just talking about it the other day, like these things used to be like in front of all the candy, not the candies, in front of the zoo. They used to have these things and the kids would go on it and would play music and it would shake them for 2 minutes and the kids would be happy. You have to keep on putting money in the meter for it, right? So the Torah is also that way. If you want Torah to be downloaded to you, you have to keep on chucking money into the meter. And that's giving tzedakah. Literally, giving tzedakah causes that illumination, to God to illuminate to you His light. Ein loidaika. That you don't have, meaning that light is not going to be shining on you. The Torah is not descending to them. The Torah stands for itself. It's not going to illuminate inside of you. Only when you do acts of kindness. Ner mitzvah, which is the idea of the lamp of a mitzvah. Again, and how do the letters work? Just like our prayer, these are letters that go upward. They get kissed by the malachim. They go all the way up. So to every act of a mitzvah is an act of elevating something from this world. But these elevating, the source of the sparks that are in the world rise all the way up to Keser, to the crown. And from there they generate a willingness by God to descend through the Torah to us. Ner mitzvah the lamp of the mitzvah, which goes from the bottom up. To the source of where the letters come from. And they draw down the letters of the light of the Torah to the person. And this is the secret of Ruach, I see Ruach, a spirit, there's the words of Zohar, a spirit, I see Ruach, brings a spirit, Va'amshich Ruach, and pulls a spirit. Pidish Ruach, Hainu B'chinas Avir. Ruach and Avir is the same idea. Hanal. U'metchili, I see Ruach. First you have to bring the spirit, which means you have to stimulate the letters above through shooting up letters from below. Makar B'chinas Ha'oisius Hanal. V'achach Amshich Ruach. Once you stimulate and connect your letters, whether through a mitzvah or through the letters of the Torah, you're sending up these letters upward. What is that doing? Touching those letters above, stimulating those letters to shine down the light of Torah. The flow of the Ein Sof into wisdom, or for the Torah to be a luminous Torah. And now we'll understand why the mezuzah belongs on the right side. And that's why the mezuzah is a mitzvah to put it on the right side. Because mezuzah represents all the mitzvahs in the sense that you're raising up, as I said in the beginning, just like every mitzvah, you're raising something up to God. So too, all the mezuzah is very, very central to that, because you're raising your entire house up to God. And since it's an upward motion, you got to put it on the right, because that's where God is receiving the gifts that we're giving Him. The right side is His outstretched hand, in which we give Him something, He takes it in. Shah mezuzah, hu Allah mamata lamayla, is lifting something up from the bottom up. Kachol mitzvahs, like all the mitzvahs, she'en yanam Allah sa'isi, it's all about lifting up the words, the letters. Because really, now you might say, so where's the letters in a mitzvah? You're not saying something. No. Every physical object in this world is made up of divine letters. The whole world is just divine speech. There's no such thing as things. Everything is really, in the Hebrew, the word things is the word devarim, words. Everything is really a code. Everything is a DNA, is a genetic code that makes up all of existence. There's no real matter. Everything is just words of God. When you do a mitzvah with something physical, you're releasing those letters and elevating them to a connection to their source. So really, every mitzvah is a elevation of letters. It's just that we don't see the letters. We see you took a coin. We see you took a piece of challah and made challah, and you lit a Shabbos candle. You're seeing objects. From God's perspective, He's seeing words that are going up. The things that you do the mitzvah with. And you're bringing it back to the source of those letters. The Keser Elyon Anal to the supernal crown, which this year, by the way, is Gematria Keser Elyon. So this year should be the elevation of all the words that ever have, holy words that were spoken. And specifically it is known And what do you write on the mezuzah? Mezuzah actually has an element of words as well. Because what makes a mezuzah, the holy words that are written inside of it. Shema, you write Shema, v'hoyam shemoya, and also v'hoyam shemoya shekasa sham echad v'hafta. It's written over there also the concept of unity and love. It's everything going back to its source. Ad b'chol ma'odecha, you should love God with all your might, which means lift yourself up. B'chenes Allah, everything's elevating yourself to God. V'koyvim b'pesach habayis, and it's you establish the mezuzah or fix the mezuzah at the entrance of the house, lahalas habayis, to elevate the house. V'chol rechushay, and all of your possessions. Hamunach b'chol ha'teva shebebayis, everything that's in all the shelves, all the furniture, all the cubbies or whatever you call them, tevos, what would you call tevos? The cabinets. That's what. Everything that's in all the cabinets of the house. Everything should be used to the love of God. All of you, you're giving God your everything. And that's why we're told to put it on the right side. Because the right side is when you bring something to someone, usually they'll stretch out their right hand and they'll take it. So the right hand of God brings lowly things close. It says, Hashem's right hand hugs us. Like a person comes to bring their friend close to him, they see someone is sad, someone is down. You take the person, you put your hand around their head, you bring them close to you, to hug them. You hug them in your right hand. So too God's right hand descends downward. To bring up to him. So when we put the mezuzah on the right side, we're dropping our mezuzah and our entire house with all of its contents in God's right hand. We're putting everything into Hashem's hand, and then He takes it up. Whenever we come to bring close to God, Yisbarach. That's in the rising energy. But what is that effect? That there is now a downloading energy, that God now illuminates His light. The lights are, that happens on the left side. And that's where the Ner Chanukah is. It's different than all the other mitzvahs. It's the illumination of Torah from above. Ner Chanukah, but the light of Chanukah, it's the lights of Torah being shining downward from God to the world. Canal Alkin Smile. That's why it's on the left. Because the Torah is compared to fire, and fire is on the left. Shema Smile, like it says, Miyamina, from his right hand, Eish dust came of fiery law, Lamai Ubefrat. And more specifically, it's because we want to target the left. Because when you have a lamp, when you have light, what's the main benefit of light? To bring the light into a dark place. The darker it is, you want to illuminate. So where is the biggest darkness? On the left side, because the left represents Gevurah, and Gevurah is Tzimtzum, and Tzimtzum means withholding. So there's less in the left side, and that's why we're watching the world in general, that everything that is associated with left in the world, in America, the political left, you see that there's more resistance to godliness. The natural, it's not perfect on the right side. There's a lot of horror on the right, but it's still generally, the left is more ungodly. The right at least thinks they're godly. And an extreme, they can be corrupt godly. But at least there's a certain acknowledgement of God. In the left side, there's a lot of atheism and non-belief, or what calls itself the left. Communism is leftist. All these things are leftist movements, and they're all element. And in Israel, you see in general also that the right is much more religious. The left is, it's that runs through, and it's called left actually. It's right. The main drawing flow of light from above downward that comes through the Torah, and on the right is Moshiach, and people who know who Moshiach is. And the left is like, no, we have nothing. Also related to that. You see it in all aspects, right and left. That left there's much more tzimtzum and constriction. You want to bring the light down below. In the place of darkness. You want to subdue the darkness to light. To illuminate the darkness. The place that was once dark and a divine concealment. U'pchenas yesh, and therefore, where God is not there, it becomes filled with ego, with self. In that very place of such brute self-centeredness and beingness should shine in, we should crack it open, and divine light should shine into that place. Yegili Oyer Hashem, the light of Hashem, should shine there. And the same is also the light of Chanukah. Lahagbir chachmas Hashem al chachma de klipa, to intensify. Chanukah is to shine into that Greek street, into the street that became, and over there to intensify the divine wisdom over the unholy wisdom. So that will explain why, number one, we tell you to put it out closer to the street, the public domain, because the public domain represents where the unity of God is not present. The street, you have everybody on the street. Not everything in the street is holy. Most of the street is unholy. The main darkness and the feeling of somethingness other than God, is on the street, the public domain, which the Zohar refers to as mountains of separation. Like the public domain is also the world of Esav. By Esav, it says in the plural that he had family members, and it mentions only 6, and it calls them in the plural. Nafshes Esav Lashon Rabin. And he should call echad yesh be'einav, because everybody is his own. Everybody has his own self-importance. The nifrad mezuzah, and therefore feels separated from someone else. In holiness, everything is clustered. Everything is full of unity, and that characterizes a holy nation, a Jewish people. We know the world. Everybody knows that Jews care for each other. There's a very deep love and a care, and there's a certain oneness, because where there's a greater dosage of holiness, there is more oneness. Where there is fragmentation, that's a sign of disconnect from God, and that's on the street, meaning outside of holiness. Heima ama oretz, rabim heima ama oretz, ukshagavra malchus beis Chashmonai, and when the household of the Chashmonaim kingdom, the Maccabees, when they got strength, tiknu, they instituted lahamshich ora Torah, to bring this powerful new light of Torah that they just brought forth, u'da Chanukah, and the light of Chanukah, gam b'makam arabim, also into the public domain. It's almost like they entered into the private domain to contaminate. We fight back by bringing the truths of the private domain even into public domain. Tura de Pruda, into the mountains. They entered our sacred space. We enter their non-sacred space to spill sacredness and holiness and enlightenment and divine sensitivity even in the darkness. Now, once we know that there is a public domain and an Esau world that is very, very ungodly, in which we want to shine light, we also understand what the relationship is to the left, because the public domain and the world of Esau and all of that derive their energy from the left side. The root of the 7 nations is in Esau. Reisha the Esav, the head of Esav, the Utfe, the Yitzchak, is in the lap of Yitzchak. And that's the spiritual holy source from where Esav derives his energy, is the lap of Isaac. Isaac is on the left. Isaac is wholly left, but Esav plugs in over there. Shubchenes Gevurais, which is Gevura. Shemchenes Kava small, that's the left. Alkein Tikno, that's why, in order to rectify the left, they instituted to La'aniach Ner Chanukah, to place the Chanukah menorah mismol on the left. Lahamshach Gilia Ara, to draw forth the intense illumination. Bishar Sham, into their source. Shal Yadei Yara Choshech, through this it will illuminate down here also into the darkness. The Yum Teku Agvurais, and these judgments that are on the left side will become sweetened. V'lo yistaf mem hayesh the klipas, it won't even evolve into klipas, because we illuminate it in the left source up there. We bring such illumination, it's not so constricted, it becomes far more relaxed, and as a result of that, there's much more flow of energy flowing through it, and it doesn't evolve down here to be dark forces. We already explained earlier, we said already earlier that you need to have the doing of the mitzvahs to cause this to flow. The inyan ha'oisiyos, when we spoke about letters. L'chein kviyas ha-mezuzah b'yamin. That's why putting the mezuzah on the right side, b'pchenes Allah, which is all about elevating the letters, shuklal is kol ha-mitzvos, which represents all the mitzvahs, shenyanam Allah, b'chenes ha-oisiyas, which every mitzvah is all about elevating the letters, ayadei ha-yamin, which you have to do on the right side, because that's the right hand of God that takes it in, who are goyim, this is what causes hamshachas ora Torah, the drawing of the light of the Torah downward, hanikra ner Chanukah, which is called the ner of Chanukah, bibchenas asmol, to the left side, v'zeu kadesh de mezuzah miyamin. That's why the sages say the mezuzah on the right side, v'ner Chanukah small, and Chanukah on the left. Ma toivu imroisecha. How beautiful, he says, are your words. In other words, the Tzemach Tzedek is so inspired by this that he concludes the Maimer with, wow, how awesome are the mitzvot, that they're so unbelievably they fit so perfectly. Every little nuance of it has such magnificent, brilliant explanation and reasoning for why everything is exactly the way it is. Because over here we discussed a rabbinic commandment, and there's so much depth into how every little part of it is observed. And that's the conclusion of this awesome four-pronged class in the mitzvah of Ner Chanukah. May we already see the entire world lit up with the great light of Chanukah forever and ever and ever, light of Moshiach, which is the light of Chanukah. May we merit that all now.